Today, discover how to cut down your January decline with a 72-hour action plan. Learn why bars with planned January promotions can see 15% higher revenue than reactive competitors. And master how to turn January from survival into a strategic reset and a first quarter foundation. Hello, and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. So today we're talking all about the natural and very normal decline that all bars and restaurants see in January. And I'm going to give you guys a plan to put in place to help decrease some of that dip that we normally see. Now, I think it's really easy to say January, honestly, across the entire industry is one of the most predictable months. For most operators, you're going to see a 20 to 30% revenue decline. That's absolutely normal. But there are ways to stop it from being so severe. So we're going to talk through, why does that January drop happen? What is the 72-hour plan that we can use to mitigate that loss? And then how can we look at our inventory and labor to also help us have a more profitable January? So first of all, like I said, we want to dive into, why is this evening happening? And I think it's pretty obvious if you really think about it a little bit, because post-holiday fatigue is what we're really talking about here. People have spent a lot of money. And when we look at consumer spending over the last holiday season in the United States, we see some of the highest spending ever. So that means people are either making a lot more money, which, let's be honest, the economic data doesn't fully support, or they've overextended. So they have these big credit card bills that are coming their way. And the average bar is going to see roughly a 25% decline in January. So we want to do some strategic actions to make sure that we can capture what market share there is. One thing I would also note about understanding January is we want to look at last January, not December, for a benchmark, right? Look at what you did last year, not what you did last month. Because if we look at December, December's one of the best months, if not the best month statistically across bars and restaurants as a whole. January is the worst. So don't compare your best to your worst. Compare your worst to your worst. But what I really want to make sure that you guys are gathering here, yes, it's a spending drop. Yes, all that's true. But this is not something abnormal. This is something predictable. And because it's predictable, it means that we can create a plan and win. So what is this 72-hour action plan? Well, it's all about promotions. And so we talked last month, if you were listening to the podcast, about creating a promotional calendar for the entire year and working on marketing plans and all of that. But if you didn't do that, now is the time to put in place a plan for promotions for January to help bring in those sales. So I would focus on doing it a little bit differently every week. And we want to play into our guest psychology. So starting in the first bit of January, so say like now through the 11th, look at a concept of like new year, new you. Be wellness adjacent. Maybe push your mocktails, do a mocktail special, focus on some lighter food options. Everyone wants, the most common resolution for New Year's in the United States is to lose weight. So people just made that resolution. They are focused on it. Give them something that's going to promote a healthier lifestyle. And for bars, that can be hard, but we can do lighter food and we can focus on the mocktails for about a week. Then kind of the middle part of January, so say the 12th through the 25th, I like to focus on pushing those slower days. So whether that's a Thirsty Thursday promotion or some sort of like Winter Wednesday where you can play into winter, maybe focus on warm drinks, hot drinks, things like hot toddies or alcoholic hot chocolates, where you can celebrate the season, give people some warmth, and at the same time, raise some revenue by doing something a little bit different than what everyone else is doing. Then weeks 4 and 5, I would look at Super Bowl buildup, right? Super Bowl is one of our biggest events of the year. We want to build into that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, bars with planned January promotions typically do about 15% higher revenue than those bars that don't. So it's really important to make sure whether you did a marketing plan last month or you're just looking at putting in January promotions today, it's really important that you get those done and get those out there. And what we always want to do, and we've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to really hash into this, but what we always want to do is make sure that we are looking at our sales data, our PMix data, our sales by the hour data to make sure those promotions are optimized for our business and are going to lead to either increasing the busy nights or increasing the slow nights, right? In January, everything's a little slow. So it doesn't really matter where we increase, but we want to focus on where we can get the most money. So if we look at guest check average, if we can promote those times when we have higher guest check averages and figure out a way to get more guests to spend that amount of money, we're going to win more. Now, the other big thing when it comes to financial management, and these are things we talk about a lot, but they're really important in January, is your inventory and your labor. So when we look at inventory, there's a lot of places that ordered a bunch of inventory in December because you were doing a bunch of sales. Well, now it's January, and guess what? You're not. And so we want to find ways to move all of that holiday inventory out. Now, we may have some holiday-specific items, like maybe you have a excess of peppermint schnapps or different types of Irish liqueur that you need to move. And that's where some of those winter drinks can come in really handy because, let's be honest, Christmas flavors and winter flavors, they are the same. So we can take a cocktail we were doing for Christmas or holidays, call it winter, and still keep running it as a way to push out that inventory that we have. What we also, though, want to do, because we know we have lower sales, we don't really want to discount things that much, so we want to reposition. And when we reposition, we can do things like carry over the same cocktails. We can do new cocktails. We can do the warm cocktails. But we want to be careful to avoid too much discounting, because when revenue's already tight, what we don't want to do is discount too much, because then we might decrease our cash flow down to zero. And that's not good, right? We want positive cash flow every month, including January, even though this is, quite frankly, statistically the hardest month to get that positive cash flow. As always, when we're doing drink specials, when we're looking at trying to move inventory, make sure your staff is trained and make sure they're incentivized to get that leftover inventory out the door. Do a sales contest among your team. Give them something to the person that wins. Make sure you structure it in a way that's fair. So I always like to make sure whenever I'm doing a sales promotion with my team that we're looking at percentages rather than actual values. Otherwise, your bartender that works during the week is never going to beat your bartender that works on the weekend. And the last piece I want to touch on today is labor. So we want to be very careful this month because we're going to be slower. So we're going to try to cut. But we never want to cut to the point that it's going to destroy our service quality and impact our guest experience. So make sure that you're looking at what you should do, and that starts by looking at last year. There's a lot of math we can get into with regards to forecasting. If you want to talk about that, shoot me an email. I will talk your ear off about it. But we want to make sure that we have the right approach. We're using our data, and we're looking at data from last year combined with data we're seeing this year in order to really understand where our business is going and make sure we have the right number of people scheduled, but not too many. Where in December, we were talking about, make sure you have people on call. For January, what we want to do is we want to make sure that our team understands, hey, it's slow and we're going to cut when we need to cut, but we're not going to overcut. And that's a really hard balance to find. But if you know your guest check average, if you know your sales per labor hour, actually the math can become very simple. The big thing here, though, whenever it comes to labor, that I really want to make sure that we're thinking of from a mindset perspective is we're not cutting to survive the month. We're optimizing our labor to meet our demand in order to thrive and set ourselves up really well for this year. So to wrap it all together for us, before I let you go here, create that promotional calendar. Look at what's going to drive sales for the next couple weeks. Liquidate your holiday inventory through repositioning, not discounting where you can. Look at drink specials you can do. Look at ways to get that out there and incentivize your team to move that inventory that you're still sitting on. And then optimize your labor by data-driven scheduling and forecasting so that you can really make sure that you make January great for your team, your guests, and your bottom line. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.